This is Bob Thomas.
Hey guys.
Yeah.
I'm about to do a little cold plunge action. Let's
All
see
right.
how this works.
Can you go, brother? One fluid motion.
Woo.
There he is. How do you feel, brother?
Oh, phenomenal.
All right, it's time for your cold question. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
How many pennies can you fit into a jumbo jet?
Holy shit.
Bob was in accounting before he went into real estate, and so we're tapping into his
what
knowledge.
kind of
base.
jumbo jet? Like a 747?
A fucking jumbo jet to Bob Thomas. Just, how are you going to solve this problem?
100 million.
How did you come up with that?
It's a random fucking guess.
I thought you were going to systematically break it down for us.
Not while I'm freezing my ass off. I think 100 million is reasonable. Like I own a car wash, and we used to have a lot of quarters, so I would take quarters in and deposit them.
Oh, okay.
And I know the size of a bucket of quarters, and so I extrapolated from there to the size of a 747.
Okay, so you did sort of think it over. How do you feel right now?
Numb.
Oh, you're numb already?
Get in there.
Nice. Welcome to Frozen Millionaires, the show where we submerge successful people in ice-cold water, then sit them down to talk about how they've achieved success. I'm your host, George McCleary, and I have a penchant for ambition, for entrepreneurship, and for watching my friends suffer in cold water. No tech CEOs or Wall Street titans here. These are the self-made millionaires next door, and they're fresh out of the cold plunge and telling their stories. What's up, friends, and welcome to episode 9 of Frozen Millionaires. So if you get into real estate investing, there's generally a ladder that you climb, a path that's more or less prescribed by those who came before you. Typically, you start off wholesaling, house hacking by renting your bedrooms, eventually buying and flipping single-family homes, and eventually moving into a niche like multifamily, Airbnb, etc. But what if you just skipped all those steps and added another 0 or 2 to the size of your deals and immediately started playing with the heavy hitters? My guest today did exactly that, and he is crushing it. Bob Thomas. He's the CEO of Peak Asset Management, and his company buys, renovates, and sells multifamily and mixed-use property here in the Great Northwest. And he does these deals primarily using the private equity model. If you're not familiar with how that works, basically Bob invests in his deals alongside his investors. And the more profit the deal makes, the more outsized Bob's return is on his investment. This is a great model for building wealth, but the main issue with it is that it's very capital intensive, and people don't want to invest unless they're convinced that you're going to make them a great return. But once you've got a few successful projects under your belt and a good track record, the sky's the limit. This is what Bob has done, and his pathway to get there is a fascinating study in recognizing and seizing opportunities, as well as overcoming obstacles that you just never saw coming. Here's my conversation with Bob Thomas of Peak Asset Management. Here in the studio, we have my friend, Bob Thomas. Thanks so much for coming, man. Appreciate you being here.
I appreciate the invite.
Oh, man. It's been a while. I've been trying to get you here for a while. So
it's hard to get over the mountains.
It is hard to get over the mountains. Bob is we'll call you like a Portland refugee, a longtime Portland resident who fled to Bend, like everybody else who could afford to did. So, Bob, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you are these days, because you're a real estate guy. We've got a lot of these guys on here, but you're pretty exceptional, though. You're only 34, right?
That's what they say.
Start by telling us who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so Bob Thomas, I run a real estate investment firm based in Portland, though I live in Bend with my COO, life partner, Kelly. But yeah, we run basically vertically integrated commercial real estate investment firm. So we run acquisitions, we raise money from high net worth and small institutional investors. We have an internal property management company that manages those properties. Focus like all value add properties, mainly like 60% multifamily and 40% retail office is kind of the split in the portfolio right now.
Right on. So you guys' superpower is being vertically integrated that you were saying. So you were saying you have a property management company, and that is part of the secret sauce then that helps you optimize these assets?
Yeah, so I think the superpower, your words, is really around like leverage. So it's around like promoted interests, putting in 5 to 10% of the equity on a deal in cash and getting 50% of the ownership.
So the private equity model, basically.
Yeah, the private equity model where you're getting management fees on the total asset that you've only placed a little bit of money into, and that you've gotten ownership in more than your pro rata share.
So I'm familiar with this model, but for anybody who isn't in my audience, who's unfamiliar with the private equity model, you have to get into the nitty gritty of like waterfalls. But maybe explain a little bit.
That is the nitty gritty, bro. But that's also the secret sauce.
That is the secret sauce. But essentially, you're only putting in $1, and but because you're doing all the work, you're getting more money back if the project does well.
Yeah, it's like. People can think about it like sweat equity to a certain extent, but if you think about the venture capital world or the that sort of private equity model, these guys put in maybe 1% of the investment, and they get the rest of it 99% via raised money, and they get 20% ownership. So they put in they get like a 20x on their dollar. I try to do the same thing. A great example is a 30plex we bought in the end of 21. I put in with my partner 15% of the equity. We have 55% ownership of that asset. But the way we did it was we used our broker fee from buying the property to contribute all but $5,000 as our 15% stake. So effectively for $5,000, we got 55% or 50% ownership of a 30plex.
That's really powerful.
That's the trade we're talking about there. And then our management company gets a management revenue off of a 30plex, et cetera, et cetera.
But in turn, you have to convince people to invest alongside you, and that what you're doing, it makes sense and it is going to make money. How do you instill that type of trust and convince these people that it's a good idea to give you their money?
I think that now we're able to point to results, and we've got to 70% of our investors are repeat investors. So the first couple deals you do when you're raising money, you're going out to friends and family and groveling in front of people, and you just can't be bashful.
Been there.
Right?
Yeah.
But after you've paid off a couple deals, those people tell their friends they want to reinvest. And so to date, we've never had a real issue with raising capital. It's really been about finding deals that are worthy enough to ask people to invest in. I think as we grow, we're going to be running into more of an issue with that. Just because at some point, with how much we want to grow, our investors are going to go into their pockets and pull out rabbit ears instead of dollar bills. And so we're trying to get in front of that by really focusing on our systems around capital raising and investor relations. We've done that for the past year. We're working on that more.
And it's good to be able to do that in-house. I was on a call just earlier today with a fellow that hired a firm to do his capital raise. He'd done 1 million and needed another 8 million. And so he hired a firm to do it. And as of today, about, I think 45 days from closing, they said, hey, thanks, but no thanks. We can no longer do it. And so he's got several $100,000 in earnest money flapping in the breeze, and he's got to come up with 8 million. And so if you've got it in-house to where you have a crop of investors that are ready to roll, that's a big advantage over folks who are relying on other people to do it. So I definitely applaud you for that. So that's your main focus, raising money and getting into projects that make sense. How are you finding these projects that make sense?
Yeah, so I'm not one of those guys who's like writing letters and cold calling. Like I've always relied on my network of brokers, of people who do the letter writing and the calling. Like I would much rather pay someone a fee to find me a decent deal and just be very selective with the deals I do. So I think, again, your first couple deals are hard. They take time, they take time to really develop and get relationships where you're getting first looks at deals. But now we have, at least some sort of brand in the market, or people know about us. And so I get a lot of calls about things coming to market before they're on the market, first looks at deals, et cetera. A lot of off-market opportunities. And, I tell all these wholesalers, I'm like, look, if you want to partner on a deal and be a, co-GP, like I'm happy to do that. If you just want a fee, I'm happy to do that. Like our model is built to be able to do more deals. So I'd rather do, 15 deals than one, and just have smaller stakes in each one of those 15 deals, because we've built out the company to be able to digest that kind of volume.
Gotcha. So you got partners, you got people out in the field looking for you. You're basically paying a fee rather than paying the money to have like a whole marketing campaign to find the deals.
Yeah, I mean, especially right now, I would say we were just looking at that about 2 years ago, about setting that up, because it was so damn hard to find deals. But there's so many deals out there right now, and there's more coming where you can buy stuff on the market Like I was listening. God, who said it? I'm forgetting who said it, but head of one large asset management firm, like a global firm, they said right now is a great time to buy real property because buying real assets like real estate with broken capital structures is the easiest way to make money. Like you don't have to buy shit deals and try to make them work. You can buy amazing properties where they just were
they just need to be recapitalized, essentially.
And then you just come in with the capital. And so that's really what you're seeing in the market right now, what you're going to see for the next couple of years.
Give us an example of something that's already gone and finished up, because the broken capital deals are going to be like going forward into the future. And that's super exciting. But in terms of like how you got your track record to begin with, give me an example of like one of the deals that you locked up, syndicated, brought to the finish line.
So
maybe your favorite. So
my favorite deal was one that we didn't syndicate. It was myself and a co-partner. We brought in some 1031 money from another deal. And that's that Wonderland, that Wonderland place.
Yeah, you told me about it. Tell us about that. So Wonderland has a special place in my heart because it's a nickel arcade in Southeast Portland. There's another one out in Tigard, and
there's 5 locations.
There's 5 locations. Oh wow, those are the ones that I went to. Quick little anecdote about Wonderland and why it's so special to me. When I was younger, when I was in 4th grade, my mom came home with a big stack of bus passes that she'd gotten from somewhere. And I saw a 20 bus was running outside of our house. It was on West Burnside Street, so like a couple blocks from where I lived. And then also in front of the Nickel Arcade was also a 20 bus. So I put it together that there was the same bus that came by my house also went to the Nickel Arcade. So I told them I was going somewhere, but didn't tell them where, I guess. Remember, this is the 90s. Things were different then. And I guess it's about 1990. I was about 10. And I took the bus to the Nickel Arcade in Tigard. I was living in Northwest Portland at the time, so this was like a 45-minute bus ride minimum. And I'd play video games and catch the bus back home. And finally they caught on, freaked out, and said, no, you cannot ride the bus as a 10-year-old by yourself out to the outer suburbs, play video games, and come home. But this is a long way of saying I love Wonderland. And now you own one.
Well, yeah, we own real estate.
You own the real estate, yeah.
So the business is operating as a tenant. The owner of Wonderland, all of them, this was their first location. It's a mixed-use building, about 20,000 feet, a little bit more, in Southeast Portland. Great location, 34th and Belmont. 17 apartments, over about 10,000 feet of retail. There's a little restaurant that takes up maybe a quarter of that space, and the rest is this nickel arcade. The seller and her husband had been operating. I've been buying a lot of stuff from couples where the husband has recently died, and they own a lot of real estate. Do that 50plex we're in contract on, same thing. You tend to find good deals. I don't know, it's weird, but anyway, I'm not trying to grave dance. But so it's seller's husband died, and she was trying to get rid of the asset. They owned the property and ran the business there.
Right.
There's a lot of nuance that goes into the structuring around this, but it was kind of off-market, pre-market. We found some stuff that could have potentially been like a real deal killer for her more generally in terms of selling it structurally. And it
came up during inspection.
Yeah, it ended up not being an issue, but sometimes you can find the seller's motivations or what they're concerned about. And this was an unreinforced masonry building, so she had a lot of concerns around the structural integrity. And we ended up finding something that could have been a real material issue, and kind of brought it to her. And we went from a purchase price. We basically lopped $1 million off the purchase price.
You've told me in the past, then in this deal and other ones, that you were a quote unquote savage negotiator during retrades.
Yeah.
And retrades is when you ask for them to take money off the price after you find things wrong with the property during inspection. And so apparently Bob will really just go to the mat over these things. Is that fair to say?
I mean, I don't like getting that reputation. I don't think we unduly do that, but I'd say at the same time, like, we're savage negotiators, like, in general. So whether it's on I think the biggest thing you need to do is you got to be more willing to walk away than the seller on a deal. And so if you're less invested in buying it than the sellers and selling it, then you have the better part.
Yeah, the person who's willing to walk away has the most power in any relationship.
Exactly. And so, I think you just need to, as long as you have that mentality. And what sucks is people getting started out, they get so horny to buy their first deal. They're like, oh my God, I need to buy anything. And like, oh, this deal kind of pencils. And it's like, just take your time, man. Like, you're going to find something. So we've finally gotten in a cadence where we, are able to say no if a deal doesn't pencil. And this year we wanted to buy $75 million in new real estate. How much have we bought to date? 0.
23 has been an interesting year.
Yeah.
I can't say I blame you one bit. I had a lower goal than 75 million, but but I have not reached that in 2023. And coming to the end of it, I almost think that's more of like a mark of distinction than like a pockmark on your record, just because there's been a massive difference between bid and ask, and no one's been able to reconcile it.
And it's not for a lack of trying. I mean, I think we've been in and out of contract on somewhere around 16 properties and like really gone through diligence. I probably spent $100,000 in diligence costs, actually going through and thinking we were going to do a deal, and hard costs to lenders and stuff like that. And then it falls apart.
And then you retrade and they say no.
Yeah. And I mean, like we're in contract and the 10-year moves 100 basis points. And so your financing costs go, to the roof, and things change. Like you need the pricing to adjust accordingly. If it doesn't, the deal falls apart.
Gotcha.
But going back to the retrade thing, so we retraded the seller, and it could have been a really material issue. It ended up not being. We got $1 million off the purchase price, and we got really attractive seller financing.
Was that half the price, or what were you under contract for?
We were in contract for like mid upper threes, and we landed at 2.9.
Okay, that's a massive retrade.
Massive retrade on an already really good deal. What I'd like to do with buying real estate is like if you are trying to underwrite a deal, like you're allocating purchase price or whatever, and something doesn't make sense. Like we've done this enough times where it's like, this doesn't make sense. Let's just buy it. Like we're buying a property and it's coming with land. And if you just put like anywhere near a market value on the property, you're getting the land for free. And if you put market value on the land, like, you're way below replacement cost. Like let's just fucking buy it. Same thing with this. It was like, hey, you're getting a bunch of studios at 34th and Belmont for like $170,000 a door. And then then you get 10,000 feet of retail on 34th and Belmont for free. It's like, oh, that's a good deal.
Yeah, I would have bought that.
Yeah, and so like when you find that, it's great, and you just got to jump on it. But we got the seller to carry at 80% LTV on a big commercial asset.
Oh, you had seller carry on that?
Yeah,
deal?
at 80% LTV at a 4.25 IO rate.
IO means interest only,
and that was at the end of 2022 when rates had already banged up,
practically doubled.
And so we put in like $600,000 down, and then we're paying her $8,700 a month in a mortgage, and she's leasing back Wonderland for 5 years, and her starting rent was $15,000.
Oh wait, is she the owner of Wonderland?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow!
So she's paying us $15,000 a month in rent from Wonderland, which is not even all the commercial space, and we're paying her back $8,300 a month in a mortgage every month.
So the checks kind of cross each other in the mail every month.
And we make $7,000 just on that, and then we have 17 apartment units and the other space.
What's the term on that note?
5.
5? Sweet. Wow, that is a great deal.
It was a great deal.
Okay, so that's a great snapshot of what you're doing today. Now I'd like you to take us back. It could be at any point where you think, your ascent started. Take us back to how you got from somebody who didn't know anything to the guy you are today.
So I've gotten this question before, and I've tried to like pinpoint it of when I really first thought real estate was the way to go. Because by college, I knew I wanted to do real estate as a major. I ended up not majoring in real estate, but like,
where'd you go to college?
San Diego State.
Right on.
So somewhere in high school, I was like, I want to do real estate as a major, everything else. I think when I was like somewhere between 8 and 12, I kept seeing, and I grew up like relatively like upper middle class. There's this wide range of what middle class is, but like, we were not hurting for money and like blah, blah, blah. So we had a fair amount of family friends who were like fairly wealthy.
Sure.
And the one thing I saw, whether they were doctors or lawyers or, entrepreneurs, they all owned a shitload of real estate. And I didn't like know how they made all their money at that time because I was too young to really get it. But I just saw this commonality of they all own a fuckload of real estate. Like there's got to be something to this. And I really think that's what kind of set me off on like there's something about real estate. But I feel like I've done it the hard way of like grinding and trying to buy a bunch of fucking real estate instead of making money elsewhere and parking it in real estate.
So there's two separate models. Just have a W-2, be a lawyer, be a doctor, make a bunch of money, and then buy real estate. But by and large, what those guys are doing, they're putting 25% down on like a stabilized asset.
Yeah, they're just parking cash.
They're just parking cash. And so, but it sounds like at a young age, you figured out that these guys that seem to really have it all together owned a lot of real estate. And you were able to figure that out at a pretty young age. How did you know?
Well, so I didn't know, like, I just saw the commonality there.
Right.
And I just saw that these guys were fairly well off and like they were getting to the tail end of their careers and seemed to be able to spend a lot of time with their families. And, they were kind of like on the back end, but weren't really working and had a lot of money. And it was just this commonality to real estate. And that was juxtaposed to my family, where my mom and dad, I mean, they're like Ivy League, mom, Harvard Law, dad, like Ivy League, Dartmouth, and blah, 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 all this shit. But they were like, went corporate route and corporate ladder climbing, and like didn't end up with nearly that like net worth and level of kind of financial freedom at the end of the day after working their asses off. And so that kind of that juxtaposition,
this sounds
really
like the plot to Rich Dad Poor Dad, basically.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Yeah, and so just seeing that, right?
This is upper middle class Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah. I mean, it seemed like Rich Dad Poor Dad was pretty a little bit higher class than that, but yeah. But yeah, so that's I think where like it kind of like imprinted, like, hey, this is probably the path to do. And then I went to college, and my dad was a CPA, and he was like, I was like, hey, I want to do real estate major in business at SDSU.
Yeah,
and he was like. It's like, you could always go back and do real estate, but get something that, do something that has a little more like practicality.
Do something practical, son.
It is exactly the conversation. And so, not having real agency in my life at that point, or like, whatever, ended up following that path.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bad, I mean, like kudos to my dad. It was good. Like I learned a shitload. It was good.
I know accounting is a great degree to get because it teaches you, it gives you a baseline on business, and you get it through the business school. I assume you went to business school. And so, yeah, that's whether it's finance or accounting, you're spending time with people in the business school, talking about business things. Yeah, I think it's a great way to start.
Yeah. I mean, I think that set me up for, right out of school, I went to work for PwC, a large international accounting firm. I was in the audit side of things, so we were working with large, Fortune 100 kind of publicly traded tech companies, and I was on IPOs right out of school, a lot of tech M&A, like large publicly traded companies, seeing how they all worked, function. You're getting the inner workings on it all. I mean, you literally have full access to everyone up to the board of directors, and so I think that's really like. The accounting track, if you go that route, sets you up to really, that's how you get your base in business.
Right.
I mean, they can teach you theoretical shit about debits and credits and like fraud and shit, but like actually going in and seeing these multinational corps work and like trying to understand transfer pricing and just, just shit that like you theoretically get in school, but like how you would apply it to, semiconductor sales from here to Ireland to, whatever.
So you're working in accounting, but you never lost the real estate bug.
No.
It still was there.
It was there, and I was hating my fucking life.
So you went the corporate route. You followed mom and dad's instructions.
Hated it.
And you fucking hated it.
Yeah, it was awful. I mean, dude, like, and what's funny, everyone at PwC that I knew hated it. Like all the way up.
You hated it, and you were surrounded by people who also hated it.
But not just like at my level. Like I was starting to get promoted and shit. Like you see this partner track and senior associate, senior manager, blah, blah, partner. Like you're at 1 a.m, in busy season with like your whole engagement team and senior managers, and the senior managers who are about to make partner are bitching about how the job sucks. And I'm like, dude, this is what I have to look forward to. And so that really, I said, hey, at that point I moved up to the Bay Area and was working, doing a lot of tech M&A and stuff. But at that point I was like, look, I need to change the direction of the cruise ship now, or else I'm going to be fucking sailing like to the destination I don't want to be at.
Right.
And
so what did you do?
I started looking for jobs.
So you quit?
No, I started looking for jobs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you started flirting around, seeing other things you could do in accounting, or
no, in real estate. So I talked to the PwC has a real estate practice. So I was thinking about going and transferring to the real estate practice internally. I'm so glad I didn't do that. But it's very compliance heavy and just like audit shit. But I started just looking on job board postings, like higher end stuff, and ended up finding a role with CBRE. They're a large, international commercial real estate firm in their institutional office brokerage team. So started off as an analyst, analyzing the valuations on large office buildings in
Did you like it?
Downtown San Francisco. I saw the upside in it. I liked transitioning from something I hated to like learning something that I was passionate about. Like, fuck yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So then you're an analyst for CBRE, and then, but you're kind of rubbing elbows with brokers. And
yeah, like I was dedicated to a broker team that was selling like large, like we were doing a couple $1 billion a year in office sales, downtown high-rise offices for large institutional owners. So it's kind of like it's like the entry level way into brokerage. And so you end up kind of moving your way up into, give me tours on properties, on, large offices, and then, kind of connecting with all these folks, and the analysts at all the ownership shops all kind of grow up together. So, if I'd stayed there for 10, 15 years, you end up knowing all the guys who are the principals, and then you're doing those deals.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're an analyst at CBRE, and then what happened?
So I always knew that, and this was kind of like my real moment of clarity. So I always knew that I wanted to own real estate. I wasn't owning real estate, right? I was helping transact real estate. There's a lot of money to be made. These brokers, when you sell a couple $1 billion of real estate, you've got like 30 to 60 million bucks in commissions to split among a few brokers. Like, everyone's doing well. But we did a deal. It was 2 towers in San Jose, and we found the deal. It was a broken capital structure. It was like 60% leased. It was just fucked. And they didn't have any more money to put into it. They couldn't get it leased back up. So we said, hey, look, sell this. And we gave them some crazy number on the sale price. And
crazy low.
No, crazy high.
Crazy high.
Because we were like, as a broker, you want to be like, hey, we think you can get this for the sale. Hire us to sell your property. All the other brokerages came in way lower. We said, look, if you take this business model and you lease up to someone like WeWork, and you put in 15 million bucks in capital, like, we think we can get you about 60 million bucks for the purchase on this.
Right.
And we think that, we can find a buyer for you who'll do that. And all the other brokers in town were like, hey, you guys are just buying the listing. Like, fuck you guys. But we ended up taking this and selling it to, I think, Harvest Properties, who partnered with MetLife, I believe, as the equity. So Harvest was the operator. And they bought it for 60. They put in 15. They leased it up to WeWork. And they sold it for like $140 million in 18 months.
Wow.
And like the principal over at Harvest, he made like 30 million bucks to his name.
Wow. So all these guys are thinking that you guys walk on water.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing, is that we found the fucking deal. We said what the business plan was. We did, all they did was follow our fucking direction, and they made all this fucking money, and we made a buy side and a sell side commission, which wasn't bad. It's a couple $1 million. Like, it's great. But like, in the grand scheme of things, I was like, this.
So you saw in that example, you saw that like what ownership could get you versus what brokerage could get you.
100%.
So brokerage definitely can make you a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And let me not dissuade anybody out in the audience from going into brokerage, because it's essentially risk-free money. If you're an owner, you can lose money, you can make money. Hopefully you'll make money. But in brokerage, it's basically impossible to lose money. It's you lose time, because a lot of what you do is spinning your wheels. But you saw at that point that being on the ownership side is really where it's at. And
that I had the ability to successfully do this, because like, they didn't do anything except what we told them to do.
Right.
And so it's like, all right, you have the skills here. And I understand the thing about risk-free money, but I've never understood why more brokers don't become investors. Because if you're finding the deal and you know the owners and you can tie up a deal and you know all the guys with the money, like, go be a principal and raise the.
I've always thought
LP
the same
equity.
thing. Oh yeah, and like in the resi world,
mm-hmm.
There's countless residential brokers that don't own anything apart from their own house, if that. And I'm always thinking to myself, like, what the heck are you doing with your skill set?
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. So then, so that bug is in your at this point. So.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I need to go on the principal side. Like, this is what I need to do. At the same time, Kelly, my partner, got a cool job opportunity in Portland, and we had never been to Portland. But it was a corporate strategy role with a large publicly traded craft beer company.
Right.
And so, where we had been? We had been to Bend.
Yeah.
And we fucking loved Bend. We were like, man, this place is awesome. We kept hearing in the Bay Area, Bend. So we drove up. We were like, man, this is great. We should figure out how to move here.
It is great. I'm a big fan.
And then Kelly got this job opportunity in Portland. We'd never been. We were like, well, fuck, we love Bend. It must be the same. And so
what year was this?
2017. And it was like the hottest place in the country to move.
Right.
And so we were like, all right, it's obviously cool. And we loved Bend. Like, let's fucking do it. And so we drive up in January of 2017 to like the snowpocalypse. And I'm driving like a 30-foot semi U-Haul, like around the Twilliger curves, literally like dead stopped in traffic because there's so much snow, and I start like sliding down, and I'm like, fuck, I'm really glad I got the damage waiver. But like, anyway, Portland's great. I love the city. We're 95% of our portfolios in the Portland metro. I don't like that geographic concentration risk, but I'm not planning on divesting to reduce that risk. I am
not planning on divesting.
I'm planning on acquiring properties elsewhere as well, right? But if I didn't like Portland, I'd be selling.
Right.
I think that Portland's bottomed out. It has room to grow. I don't mind the weather as much as Kelly did. But you know, I mean, it's definitely got its issues, but no, I'm a fan of Portland. Do I prefer to live in Bend? Like, as of now, yes.
Right. I think you and I basically have the same feeling about, you know, Portland and Bend as most people that have come onto this show, is that there is some, like, if to put it in real estate terms, Portland has great bones. You've got a lot of great things around here, but it's colored in a way. It has some schmutz on it that needs to be rubbed off.
Yes.
And Bend doesn't really have that, but you have a lot of the same things that Portland has in terms of like access to recreation and a few more sunny days, great culture, things like that. So, but ultimately you ended up making the move there. But so going back to your ascent, so you figured that you're going to be on the ownership side of things. So do you keep your job at CBRE?
No. So when Kelly got the job in Portland, I was like, if we're ever going to do the entrepreneurial game, now's the time. We don't have kids, right? And like when we do, I'm going to go and get a corporate job if I don't have anything else lined up, because, you know, I'm going to get risk averse and all this shit. So if there's ever a time to try something a little more entrepreneurial, you know, it's now. And I had done some work with CB when in Portland. And so I had some connections to some institutional real estate owners up here. But yeah, I started becoming a professional networker. I was having like 7 coffees every morning. Like, I was so fucking wired from caffeine. It was nuts, but I was just meeting a bunch of different people, asking for business cards, asking for secondary connections. And then I found a job posting with Merchants Mortgage. They were trying to set up, it's a hard money like debt fund. And they were trying to set up a branch in the Pacific Northwest. And I was like, so you want to pay me to go network with real estate investors? What I'm already doing. Like, okay, I'll go ahead and give that a shot. So I partnered up with them, and I just kept doing what I was doing.
Were they paying a salary, or was it just commish?
No, it's both. Yeah, it was a small salary and then commission upside.
And then if you were able to close some hard money loans, so hard money loans, these are the loans that like fix and flippers get, where they're doing investment properties and flips, development, things like that.
Yeah, and so I mean, basically, what was cool is that when you come into a new market as a real estate broker, you don't know anyone. And no one really wants to know you because you don't know anyone, and all the real estate brokers don't want to help you out because eventually you're going to take their fucking business. But as a lender, you come in and you actually have a product that people want, which was, you know, we were selling 10% interest and 2 point.
Plus you're a hard money lender. There's a gazillion real estate brokers and there's a million conventional lenders. There's also a lot of hard money lenders, but you don't hear from them quite so much unless you're in the fix and flip and investment game. But essentially it's higher interest debt. It's a higher interest mortgage on a property, and they'll also finance the repairs a lot of the times.
And we had a structurally cheaper cost than anyone else at the time. So back in 2017, every like Rain City and Veristone, all these, they were like 12% and 2 points. And that was like the game.
And 2 points is the fee. So that's a 2% fee. Like if it was $100,000, it would be a $2,000 fee. Sorry, I got it.
Yeah, no. Yes.
Yeah, you might have noticed Bob loves to throw around the jargon like everybody else.
I don't even know what I'm throwing around jargon. Everyone says that shit. I'm like, what's jargon? Anyway, I live and breathe this shit. But yes, I mean, like 12% and 3 points was like the standard pricing. And I was like, well, I can do 10 and 2. And it just sold itself. And so when you're able to execute, and, you know, I came from a world where I knew what I was talking about, right? I mean, I had done a couple $1 billion of commercial real estate deals. I understood how to analyze like an investment deal. And so it paired really well. You know, I was able to help clients really think about how to structure loans in different ways, and like, you know, how to use seller credits and seller financing and just a bunch of different stuff to really make their cash in the deal light and their profits juicy. You know, I just started to build a reputation in town while still looking for, you know, ways to do like investment deals on the side.
So then, did you find one?
Yeah. So of
course you did. Tell me about how you found a deal.
So the first deal I did, and you know the guy, Lane Lowry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there's this multifamily ground up developer in Portland, and you know, I mean, he's got. Anyway, he was doing some big stuff at the time, and he still has some projects going on. But
I hear
he had a 100-unit ground up project in the Southwest waterfront, and he had just entitled it, and he was looking for equity to come in on the deal to fund a construction loan. And he didn't want to raise the equity. That's like not his skill set. His skill set is taking land and putting as many units on it as possible. I was like, well, shit. Well, let me see if I can raise the money for you. And so We syndicated a couple $1 million and put it in and built a 100-unit apartment complex.
You only need a couple million to do 100 units?
There was already a lot of land value in there.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he had bought a 40-unit site and re-entitled it into 100 units. And so he got a shitload of spread in the land. So yeah, we ended up raising another couple million. It might have been somewhere in that ballpark. And yeah, that was really the first indication. Then after that, and that's since like our investors all got paid off, they all made money. It was good. Since then after that, I did a couple house flips and just started to kind of build like a, see who I could work with and how partnerships worked and stuff like that. And then, yeah, I went really hard in the paint in about 2020 buying commercial assets.
It sounds like you never really had the phase in your career where you're doing sort of like lower level, like wholesaling or things like that. And what do you think of the reason is for that? Because most people, they enter it, either they're an architect or a broker. In your case, I mean, you were ostensibly a broker, but much kind of higher level in the commercial space. So did that kind of give you the mindset that it just was not a good idea to fuck around with the small stuff?
People ask me, how do you get into commercial real estate? And I always tell them, I have no idea. Like, I had to learn how to get into residential real estate, right? Like when I started doing fix and flip properties, I was like, Jesus Christ, like, I don't even know like what the settlement statement really, like we had, like a whole other team who worked on like actually closing a fucking deal. Like all we did was just put money together and made it work. So like, I had to learn all the actual nuances of like, transactional real estate. But yeah, like the way I learned real estate was very institutional with a lot of capital, different structures and layers and GPs and LPs and mezz debt and pref and senior debt. We were full stack capital markets. So that's like how I learned it. And so that's how I've approached every deal. And going back to that, kind of transformational deal I saw where I was like, fuck, I can do this. There was the GP and there was the LP. And it's like, I want to be that GP. I always knew I wanted to be like the guy running the show, calling the shots, who like had the biggest promoted interest in these things.
Right.
And so to do that, like you can't do a house flip. It's just as easy to do a house flip as it is to do a 100-unit apartment complex when you're doing like more or less. Like there's a lot of fixed time and costs that go into both of these. And like the profitability on a house versus something like that is like significantly different. And so it just makes way more sense when you're doing a model of using other people's money and syndicating yourself up to have a big enough promoted interest where you can take a good chunk that makes you fucking wealthy without diluting your other investors.
I think the biggest difference is the war chest. When it comes to like a very simple flip, say we're like in a flyover state, you can do a flip with like $4,000 of your own money. And if you're in Portland, you can do it with, $40,000 of your own money. And then once it gets to a certain scale, it either is not a great idea to put your own, $500,000 into it because it represents too big of a chunk of your net worth, or eventually you have to get money from other people. That's sort of the line that it crosses. But you kind of had that in your back pocket from your background, it sounds like.
I reverse engineered the thinking around that, and it wasn't like there isn't a big enough war chest. It's like, if I want to make the money I want to make, I need to do bigger deals. Because if I'm going to be raising other people's money to do it, because that's the only way I know how to structure real estate deals is by putting together a capital stack. Like I need it to be big enough so I can get paid fat, and still my investors aren't going to get diluted.
Right.
And so it's the same thing. It's just like looking at it like, how do I do this? I need to go to scale in order to do it.
And in a way, it actually is simpler than a house flip, because if you're the guy that is in charge of every last thing in the house down to the screw, then you've got to be the one to like drive to the site. Whereas if it's a much bigger deal, if it's a bigger commercial deal, you're not the guy that's responsible for that. You're paying guys to do that. And in a way, it adds simplicity to it.
Well, I mean, it took a while, and you start out doing a lot more, but we've built our team over time. And so now we have a team, and, we have property management that we've built out with payroll and everything. We have project management that we have, construction management in house and everything like that. And so, does it at the end of the day, as a good leader and as, kind of the figurehead of this organization, like the buck stops with me. So if shit gets fucked up, like I'm on the line to our investors and everything else. But yes, it's not my day-to-day responsibility to be, like I get updates from our project management team on like, is the Gantt chart tracking to plan?
Right. Gotcha. Very cool. So then was that like a watershed moment? Because there's the part of the show where we're talking to you about like, when you think like, oh my goodness, okay, I think this is actually working. Was it that project that you did with Lane, or take me to like a watershed moment where you think like, okay, wow, I can really do this. Things are going up.
this is going to be funny. It takes us back a little before then. I had moved to Portland, and I don't know if I was with merchants yet, but I had never done a brokerage deal, debt or equity, like on my own, ever. I'd always been on like a team and everything else. And I did a $70,000 second position hard money loan brokerage deal for someone who needed like a single family house flip,
And made like $1,400
and made like $700.
Okay.
And I was fucking stoked, dude. I was like, holy shit. Like I can do this on my own. Like, let's go. Like literally it was like I think it was $700.
So that was like your first one that you did that was just you. That was you eating what you killed.
Yeah.
You shot some. It was a squirrel. It wasn't a big one.
It was a squirrel.
But you took it down, you skinned it, and you ate it.
Yeah. And I was stoked. And it wasn't about the squirrel. It wasn't about the meat on the squirrel or anything else. It was just like the ability to actually hit the fucking squirrel.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, this is sweet.
Yeah. No. I think you shouldn't downplay the size of it. It was the fact that you did it. And before you were part of like a massive squad.
Yeah.
But now you were, it's just you and your own two hands.
Yeah.
And you went out and got it.
Yeah, I was fucking elated. So yeah, no, that was sweet. Then I'd say like the real stuff, like I never had doubt that we could buy a bunch of real estate because I had seen like it's just more zeros, right? It's just more zeros on the size of the deal. So I think what's tough is like on the size of deals we do, it takes about 2 years to stabilize and get to a point where you can refinance. And that's the way we run our business model. We basically do commercial burrs. Buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat, right? And so like we do a lot of work up front. There's not much cash flow. You do all this work, get it released, and then you go and get a refi 2 years down the line. And so we started going hard in the paint right in the early pandemic, buying a shitload of commercial real estate, but they were all value add deals. And so it took until about end of 21, mid 22 to really start seeing like fat cash out refis and proceeds coming off of that. So you see your balance sheet growing and, your personal financial statement, but you don't actually see like the liquidity hits coming in. But we've been very consistent and intentional about acquiring real estate with a similar profile that we were believers in.
That actually brings me to another thing that I wanted to ask you about, which is kind of growth of the company and like building equity positions, building wealth essentially, versus taking cash out, buying speedboats, contributing to your lifestyle and everything. How do you manage that relationship between like building value of the company, building equity, having a bigger, fatter balance sheet versus taking cash and living large off of it?
So I don't have a personal budget. I have a business, but I control my business expenses to a dime. And I know what's going on with everything else. I have a personal financial statement, but I don't have like a personal household budget. Right. And I say that to say like, I'm not living like a fucking pauper. All right. I mean, like I do an annual heli skiing trip. Like I have an annual 10 or 15 grand. It's in the fucking my mental budget. That's just every year it's going to the fucking heli ski trip. We take trips and do other stuff. But am I going out and buying a bunch of unnecessary like toys? Like, no. Do I own my house in Bend? No, I rent my house in Bend. That's a very intentional decision, especially right now in the market. The only 1 to 4 unit property I own is my former primary residence in Portland. Everything else is commercial.
Wow.
But so that's all to say what I'm going to say next, which is like, I reinvest every fucking dime. Like, just cause I love it. Like I'm fucking addicted to it. And so and what's cool is I still do the merchant's mortgage thing.
Yeah.
And so like,
that's your pocket money essentially.
Yeah. So we have money coming in the door on that. And I get distributions that come in, but do I ever take money out of my businesses? Like, no.
Right.
Like zero. No, because I don't need to. And like, I think that one of the coolest things that I realized a couple years ago, I had like these personal financial goals. I was like, you want, by the time you hit X or by this year, you're going to have this net worth and this passive cash flow and all. And it was very, very like me centric. I started to realize that I was going to get there, 1, and 2, that like, that was kind of boring. And so I pivoted and said, all right, I want to do something larger. I have and we could talk about the ambitions for the company or whatever, but like, I want to do something larger. And that takes building a company and having other people helping and helping realize this vision. And so I scrapped all my personal financial plans. I'm like, fuck that. That's going to happen. Let's build a company that can scale up to like a truly significant size that can make like a tangible impact on the world. And that's literally what we're going for now. And like my wealth and financial, capacity, that just comes as a byproduct of us building something kind of bigger collectively.
Interesting. So it kind of jibes with what you were saying before about sort of valuing experiences over toys, as you put it. And I'm right there with you on that. I'm not really big on toys. I'm definitely much bigger on experiences.
Unless there are skis or snowboards, then I have a lot of them.
Yeah, no, there's plenty of crossover. There's crossover between experiences. But you can't go down the type of runs that Bob goes down, which are formidable on rental skis. So you gotta have the real deal. So no, that makes sense. So you're not spending money on expensive houses or living it up in Bend. You're probably saving the capital that you would have put on a down payment for a Bend house into your deals that are going to be earning you a much higher return anyway.
Oh yeah, and I'm still convincing Kelly on that front, because she was, and most of us are taught that like, hey, you need to own your house you live in, and it's like your biggest investment, and we obviously know it's not our biggest investment, right? But like at the same time, there's still that kind of ingrained from childhood thinking there.
Well, most people, or a lot of successful people, have a ridiculous amount of home equity, and it's earning them a paltry amount of money. Whereas if they took all that equity, put it into something, they could put it into an index fund, they would be getting a whole lot more than they were getting on their return on their home equity.
Well, I tried to tell my fucking father-in-law, or I guess father-outlaw, I'm not married, that he bought his house in cash in like 21, and I was like, Gerard, you need to take out a high leveraged fucking mortgage on your house, like right now. And you need to do it as high leverage as you can. It's like 3% interest. It's never gonna happen. Like, he's like, oh, but like, what about the mortgage payment? I'm like, it doesn't matter, bro. Like, put it in a fucking like bond. Oh yeah. But so I was like, dude, and now he's looking back on it and he's like, fuck, you were so right. And I'm like, yeah, obviously. But that goes to your point of like people overlook the equity in their house, or like, just have all these nest eggs. It's like, dude, do something productive with your equity. And so, I mean, I'm going to buy a house in Bend at some point. It's going to be a fucking deal, because I'm a deal junkie.
Right.
And until then, if you look at just like the house that I live in right now, I pay $3,500 in rent. If I was to buy that right now, I'd pay $8,000 in a mortgage.
Yeah.
It makes no fucking sense. So I'm going to rent. Like,
yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. Yeah. I mean, there's different ways to cut it up. So the house that I live in, completely rehabbed it and created value from that in excess of what we actually put into it. And so that's one way I justify having a huge equity position in the house that we live in. And also I like just having a lower mortgage payment, and it tickles my fancy from a risk perspective. And so, and I think if I said like, hey honey, guess what, we're renting. There's plenty of battles that I don't want to fight, and that's one of them. So the day is going to arrive when you get yourself a baller house in Bend, but it's going to be a little bit like I did. It's going to be like a value add component.
It's going to be It's going to be a land deal for sure.
A land deal.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the only way to really do a resi deal that I, give a shit about. Like, it'll be acreage, and I'll, cut off 20 or 50 houses and build them and get a free like $8 million house out of it.
Gotcha. Okay. So do like a subdivision play.
Yeah. Something like that.
There you go.
UGB, the urban growth boundary annexation, some shit like that. Until then, it just like houses. I mean, don't tell my hard money loan clients, but like house flips just bore the fuck out of me. They're so fucking easy and just mindless. It's like, do something, and you don't make a lot of money, and it's all tax inefficient. Like, that's just not, in my mind, the right way to do real estate.
Disagree. I've made tons of money off of house flips.
Yeah, but again, like this it's like, what's that money doing now?
I mean, well, the ones that I've bird are just doing okay.
Well, that's not a house flip.
And then the ones that I flipped, all that money, you lather, rinse, repeat. I mean, that's the Burr model, that's the house flipping model. Let's talk about.
Seems like a lot of work, though.
It is a lot of work. Yeah, and that's why I've been doing less of them lately. It's just because it's an ass ton of work. Let's talk gut punches, setbacks, things that have happened. It hasn't all been smooth sailing.
No.
So, what have you had to contend with over the years? What's been a gut punch you've had to contend with?
So, I one real estate one that we're going through right now, and then kind of one more personal one. So, one of the first properties I bought, I was a multifamily property that was going to be going through a rezoning process, significant increase in density. So we bought it with the idea to wait for the zoning to happen, scrape the site, and put up like 80 or 90 units. We ended up getting to the rezoning happened. We did the entitlement process, and then we got this, plan set and got the budget for it, an actual like final contractor bid. And my partner was like, whoa, I don't want to sign a recourse construction loan for like $15 million fucking dollars. I was like, okay.
Makes sense.
I was like, makes sense, but like, what do we want to do now? And so we've been trying to like figure it out for the past, like we keep trying different models and we keep trying to re-engineer the fucking wheel. We should have just sold the place and broken even. Now we're in a situation where like we are moving forward with like a value add on a shitty 9-plex and turning it into an 11-plex. That's like kind of a break even, but more like just digging ourselves like a less of a loss because of where interest rates have gone and everything else. And so it's like, it's kind of a gut punch because like you've been in this thing for so long, you have capital tied up. And this is one where like, I've been feeding the fucking beast. We've been having capital calls. I'm probably in it. I don't know, somewhere between 200 and 400 grand. Right. I'm just like cash is just tied up for 5 years.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, man, and that's just at some point, what it's taught me is that like, at some point it's all about velocity of equity and doing new deals.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to take, I told you before, like I've never realized a loss in real estate. If I sold this one right now, it would be a loss.
Yeah.
We're probably going to hold it until it becomes a gain. But like, we should have sold this fucking thing, taken the cash, taken a little lick on it, taken the cash and redeployed. Because like where we've been the most successful is doing value add deals and then spinning the fucking wheel as quickly as possible.
Oh yeah.
More value.
No, I've always said it's better to take a 5% loss, within the span of a year than it is to take a 5% gain within the span of 7 years.
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%.
Because you just take your cash, redeploy it in a better place because probably something happened in this case. It sounds like you got hamstrung by interest rates. Bad things happen, cut your losses and move on to the next thing that is actually going to work.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So, I think that it's that sort of stuff. Now we've been really, I don't know, lucky or whatever. So, it's better to be lucky than smart sometimes. I think when you see repeated success, it's like you're doing something right. But we've been able to buy deals at such a good basis where even if we get into like a pinch, debt's coming due or the pandemic happens, blah, 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 you're able to salvage it because you were a savage fucking negotiator and like cut the throat on your seller. Sellers, if you're listening to me, still sell me your property. But nonetheless, it's like I think that's been the saving grace is we buy like pretty good deals. We weren't getting in over our skis. I'm very conservative when I underwrite deals. I don't put in market rent growth. Like people are like, wow, yeah, I want to invest in your deal. Like there's no way that these are coming true. It's always going to be like go to the upside. I'm like that's the way
And that's actually a great way to sell to investors, I've found, is that I think it's a whole lot better to have really conservative assumptions across the board and promise them like a 17% IRR than it is to have outlandish assumptions and promise them like a 35% IRR.
Like 350 a door exit in North Portland.
Exactly.
But what was I forget, what was your other question on that?
So the gut punches is what we're talking about.
So yeah, the other gut, this was interesting because Kelly and I, back in like 2017 or 18, we were like, life's pretty good. Like, I wonder what's going to happen that's going to change that, because like I couldn't look back on life and say, we've had issues, there's been issues and whatever, but there hasn't been like a real calamity.
Right.
And we were like, let's hope this continues, but like
law of averages eventually might catch up.
It's going to happen. And then we were having trouble. We wanted to have a kid. We started trying and it took like a while. And Kelly was like, man, maybe this is like our thing. Like maybe we're going to have like problem having kids. It's going to be tough. And I was like, yeah, that could be. And then we go into the doctor and Kelly finds out that she's pregnant.
That's good.
And the same day we find out that she has cervical cancer.
That's bad.
That's bad. The same fucking day. And by the time they've actually done all the testing and figuring it out, they're like, yeah, so you kind of need to like have a hysterectomy or in some way like, chemo radiation or something that's going to make you infertile and like kill the kid that's in you now because like, it's all fucked up and it's going to be bad. Yeah. So we were like, oh, so this is it. Or this is at least one of the, like, this is a gnarly fucking thing.
Here we are.
But we were looking at the whole, situation. We were like, man, if we don't try now, we're never going to be able to do this. So we kind of, anyway, there's a whole story behind it. We went off the rails and told the doctor to go fuck themselves, and like, kind of relied on research from like China and South America and shit. And we ended up doing chemo while Kelly was pregnant, neoadjuvant chemo or something like, anyway, it's like, it could have had a bad impact on the kid and hearing loss. And we didn't know if mom was actually going to make it. And so my base case was mom's gone and the kid's around. And the kid's around, but like impaired, growth impairment, deaf, something like that. And I mean, I had a shitty 2019, dude.
Yeah, I'd imagine. That's a lot to contend with.
Yeah, a lot of OHSU visits and like, what the fuck? And, Kelly's giving me your bank passwords and like, I mean, dude, it was like gnarly.
This is what I'm talking about when I talk about gut punches. This is absolutely a punch in the gut.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening?
So she did all the chemo stuff. We gave birth at OHSU, C-section. They did a PET scan on her, and there had been more metastases. Like, it was going into her lymph nodes. It was going to eventually, it like starts in your pelvis, goes through your lymph nodes, into your lungs, and kills you of your lung cancer. That's like the standard way. So it was already starting to go up her spine. So they were like, we got to radiate like now. We were like, well, is there a chance that we could do IVF and get an embryo or something like that? And they said, you got 3 fucking weeks. And so we went to Live Strong, and they gave us the IVF medication for free. Like, whatever you think about Lance Armstrong, Live Strong is fucking great. So we basically made a few embryos. We ended up getting one that survived like all the shit. So we've had a daughter, a genetically healthy embryo daughter on ice for the last like 3 years at OHSU. Wow. But then they did the whole radiation chemo thing. Kelly became infertile, but saved her fucking life. Kid ended up being healthy. No hearing loss issues, no growth issues, like all good there. And now I'm 2 weeks away from having a daughter via a surrogate.
Wow.
And everything's kind of out going there. So 2019 was fucking gnarly, and I was super blessed that it all worked out well. And like now it's like kind of we're playing with house money, and I just feel like super blessed. It's like, wow, I get a chance at another kid, and she's about here.
Dude, that is amazing.
Yeah.
Holy Toledo.
Yeah.
What a saga. I had no idea. I mean, I'm so glad it worked out the way it did.
Yeah.
I mean, given the alternative.
It was gnarly. So it's like, yeah, I mean, there's been gut punches and everything else. And like, people are, oh man, what do you think about how successful you are and this or that? And we just, like, I have such big ambitions for like the company that like, I don't really see, I'm grateful with where we are as a company, but like, we're just a fucking drop in the bucket of where we want to be. And I know that it can all blow up, right? I mean, we use a lot of leverage in this business. Market turns can happen, COVID can happen, shit can just wipe you out and take your legs out. And so what I'm glad about is that I took the risk when I did, before I had the kid, to get started in the entrepreneur stuff, to be able to like get where I am now. And even if it all blew up tomorrow, I'd be super grateful that I was like able to get this far and like pursue what I'm passionate about, and that I've still been able to be lucky enough through all that shit to have like a family that's healthy, and like we love each other, and we're living in a place where we love. It's just, anyway, it's like, it's great. So are there going to be more setbacks, like gut punches? Like fuck yeah.
But stuff like this really does put it in perspective.
But it totally puts it in perspective.
Yeah, because if the business blows up, I've always figured, I think Henry Ford said something, if he lost all his money, he took it all away, he'd have it all back in 5 years. So there's that component of it, that like all that we've learned so far in our careers has basically armed us for any sort of like black swan event that completely wipes us out, that there's a pretty good chance we could get it all back within a number of years. But then when you get the perspective of like a real life-changing event like what you went through, and you compare it to how you felt then, things going to the bad then versus things going to bad in business, there's just absolutely no comparison.
It's just money.
It's just money. And so you mind your money very carefully. It's what we do all day. It's what we're passionate about. But it does not mean shit in comparison to the stuff that really matters. And when you have a little brush with that, it helps give you that perspective.
100%.
So that is very cool.
Amen.
Morning routine. What's your morning routine?
Dude, I'm a workaholic. Like, I'm just a fucking workaholic. Like, everyone has these. I used to want to be better at my morning routine and do like fucking meditation and gratitude journaling and shit. Like, I get up and I sometimes make breakfast for my kids, or sometimes Kelly makes it, and I hang out with my kids kid until he's off to daycare, and then I just fucking work. And I work super long hours until he gets home from daycare, and then I pack it in until he goes to bed, maybe Kelly goes
So you're not journaling, doing yoga, any sort of
and then after Kelly goes to bed,
exercise.
I fucking work some more. Like all I do is work, dude. But I love it. I mean, so you invited me to that Go Abundance thing.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that Go Abundance thing was cool because, and I know this already, but like we did the one sheet or whatever, and you have all the different areas in your life, and like I am fucking lacking. I am like savagely lacking in every area but work.
It sounds like, yeah, we'll get you eventually, buddy. Just wait.
But you know what I mean, but nonetheless, but I love what I do, and so it's great. But like, yeah, in terms of morning routine, like I mean, I don't like, I need to start working out more. Like, luckily I'm an active outdoor guy and I live in a ski town. And so like, I'm trying to get out 50 days a year to go skiing. And like, you know, I'm going heli skiing in April and like I do fun shit like that. But morning routine, like I need a better one. I need to go to bed earlier. I need to be more structured about it. But I'm like a night owl like a night owl workaholic. Like,
What time you getting up in the morning?
I mean, I got woken up at 2 this morning by my son who came into our bed and started like, you know, doing a helicopter move and kicking me every
The kids have been doing cannonballs on me at all hours for, you know, many years now. That
5:30 to 7.
My son is now 7. It's starting to trail off, which is good.
5:30 to 7, depending on the kid.
Then you start to miss it, I promise. Yeah, which I know sounds weird, but
Oh no, I mean it's cute as fuck. But like, yeah, in terms of like the sleep stuff, I go to bed 11:30 to 2, and I'll wake up 5:30 to 7.
All right. Fast 5. What's the best habit you have? Is it work ethic?
Oh, this is a slow start to the fast 5. The best habit I have is crunch time work ethic.
Crunch time work ethic. I like it. What advice would you give yourself 10 years ago, if you could?
Buy real estate.
What does money mean to you?
Money is like a tool. People say money is a tool.
Money is a tool.
I think there's 2 levels of money. I think there's like the baseline living expense money, right? And then there's like the opportunity to do what you want money. And that first bit is a bitch. But once you crest that, then it becomes and that's like, you know, you're not worrying about this. Kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like it's like Bob's hierarchy of fucking dope.
No, money actually does equal happiness up to about like something like 60 grand a year.
60, 80, something like that.
Yeah. Once you have that met, then like, you know, you across the money equals happiness threshold, and then it's just kind of up to you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So that's my thought. And then above that, it's literally like all money does for me now. It doesn't even do much for me because the way I do my business, I don't need money to do deals. So like, it's literally just a scoreboard at some point, but like, I'm not even that competitive. So I don't give a fuck about the money. Like, I just like, I enjoy the chase.
Are you sure about that?
I enjoy the chase.
Are you sure that you're not a competitive guy?
No,
because maybe deep down inside, because based on a lot of that I've heard you say.
Maybe with myself. Like I like being competitive with myself, but like really I'm less about the money and more about like the chase of the deal. Like I love the high when you like get a new deal under contract and you got this sick fucking opportunity like that. Like I chase that.
Yeah, that is definitely a rush. I definitely know that. What are you most worried about right now?
Being a present father to my kids as they are growing up and not being there. I've got this thought that like I'm trying to push super hard as fast as I can to get to a point where I can like let it run on its own. But I'm concerned that a lot of people don't let that happen and they just keep grinding forever. And I'm concerned about that. I'm deeply concerned about that.
Instinct takes over. Speaking to you several years down the road, I had that same thought because I used to have the same work schedule as you did, where I would work, you know, crazy hours way up until midnight routinely. I basically never do that anymore. For several reasons, but partly is because the presence that you feel with your kids and your loved ones and everything starts to very much be impacted by that, and you'll eventually will catch up with you as you age. but your instinct to when to work and when to be with your family and when to have fun with the boys and when to rip a shot, when not to, and everything, it gets refined over time in my experience, and really it's reached, at least for me, a real optimal level now to where I feel like...
Or you just rip shots all the time.
Exactly. You wake up, you rip a shot, and then you get to work, you rip a shot. It's time to play with the kids.
You rip a shot.
Rip a shot. What are you most excited about right now?
So I think like bar none is my family growing.
Right.
I'm so excited about that. Like I said, I mean, the whole story behind it, it's like we had one bullet, right? We only had one, and this, like, there were so many needles to thread, different, like finding the surrogate, and like the thaw could have fucked it up. Like there's so much stuff. The implantation could have gone wrong. Something could have gone wrong, like everything. And so anyway, I'm most excited about that. Business wise, we're closing on a really strong deal. First one of the year. We're closing in 2 days on Thursday.
This is the 30 unit out in the hood.
50-plex
50.
In a reasonably okay part of Portland, for $90,000 a unit. It's anyway. It's like, I like to buy deals with an unfuck-upable basis, and this has an unfuck-upable basis. So that's good. And then I think in 24, it's like, man, I'm really looking forward to this maturity wall, this impending wave of maturities coming due. Like I spent the last couple of years like really building our capital base, and I think we've got the better part of $80 to $100 million in equity, like ready to deploy into. And this is not that office stuff I was talking about. That office thing is totally separate. It's just like, anyway, we can talk about that later. But like, we've got enough money set aside to buy all these fucking deals. It's literally just about finding those deals now, and I think they're all coming in the next like 2 or 3 quarters.
Oh yeah, no, I would be excited for you too.
Yeah.
Awesome. How do people find you?
Our website, peakassetmgt.com, is a good place. B Thomas at peakassetmgt.com is me. My work cell is 503-489-7658. I'm just a deal junkie, man. Like, people want to talk deals. If they want to talk, hey, I have something. What do you think about this? Do you want to partner on it? Like, I just love.
Are you on social much?
No. Like, I like browse social, but I just don't have time for that shit, man.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, dude, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming, man.
Thanks for the invite.
All right.
Thanks for the cold plunge.
And nice shirt, by the way. Yeah. New threads. All right. Give it up for Bob Thomas.
Thanks for the invite, man. That was fun.
That was fun. Awesome, man. So that's Bob Thomas. And in case you can't tell, I've been friends with Bob for a few years now, so I know a little bit about his life and career. But I promise you, I had no idea that he'd faced the challenges that he faced when growing his family. You've probably noticed that within the format of this podcast, I dig into the gut punches that all of these entrepreneurs have faced, the setbacks, the bad luck. Most of the time, these are financial setbacks, legal trouble, problems within the context of business. These are problems, and I don't mean to diminish them. But I tell you what, stories like Bob told about the life of loved ones hanging in the balance, these are actual problems. We said it in the podcast. When it comes to business, it's only money. Does money matter? For sure. The point of this podcast is to be the best you can be and to win the game. But one thing is for certain, and we can all agree on this. Life events involving the health and well-being of our loved ones can render money completely insignificant within the blink of an eye. For me, it comes down to this one question. Would you trade everything you have, every possession, every dollar, every stitch of clothing, scrap of food, all that you have in order to preserve the life of a loved one? Chances are, especially if you're a parent like I am, the answer to that question is, where do I sign? This happened to Bob, and he pushed through it, and with everything shored up, he's luckily able to once again concentrate on his business and building a prosperous life. So for that, I commend him, and I also commend anyone out there in listener land who's going through anything similar. If it's a business problem, do your best to solve it, knuckle down, and keep moving forward. But never lose sight of what actually matters. Gratitude is one of the single biggest gifts that you can give yourself, and you can give it to yourself every single day. And in the same way that Bob built his business by going straight to the top, I'd encourage you to go straight to the top in terms of your gratitude that you feel for what you have in the world today. Write down what you're grateful for and catalog what's important to you. And if you're going hard and trying to make it in the business world, chances are pretty good that the people and things you're most grateful for are the very reasons you work as hard as you do. Channel this energy to be the best you can be and go as far as you can go, and you will be doing it right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Frozen Millionaires, and if we've earned a good review on iTunes from you, then I'd absolutely love to see it. We'll see you next time, where we will once again be embracing the cold to ignite the dream. We'll see you then.